Ladies and gentlemen of the congregation, this is Pope Gravy. Please put your hands together for Pastor Baby.
You need Jesus. Go back to church. Bitch.
Hey guys, welcome to the video. This is a guide for Paladin threat in WoW Classic. This guide will not include the buff spam method of threat generation, and I'm going to be showing a few examples and situations here, just kind of what the general toolkit is and ways to use it within different encounters. Traditionally, Paladins have spammed blessings for threat, preventing them from taking a large catalog of bosses. I'm going to be highlighting the damage dealing method to tank. I'm going to be going over our single target, how to conserve mana while doing so in both raids and dungeon situations, and how to split your threat among multiple targets. So please comment if you enjoy any of this or are looking for more content. I'm personally having a fun with Paladin, and it's something that I highly recommend for people to try. You will have an absolute blast with it. It is, in my opinion, the most fun tanking classic, and I have way more fun with it than Warrior. So let's jump into it. First up, we're going to be having seal twisting, which is going to be our main way of generating our threat. And as you can see here, it's just going to be overlapping our seals on our weapon swings so that they both go off at the same time, giving us very bursty threat on our auto attacks. The next thing that I want to highlight here is that while you are casting these seals to overlap, they actually generate threat on their own too. So right here you can see I have a seal already active, but whenever I recast my seal, which typically will be happening when you're seal twisting, where you're going to be overlapping and overwriting the other seal, it will actually produce threat. So right here what's going to happen is when I cast Seal of Righteousness, I'm going to produce 110 threat every time that I cast it. This means that I'm going to be generating a large portion of threat that actually won't show up on the damage meter because it doesn't deal any outright damage, but it does build and add behind the scenes over time. So right here you can see there goes the Seal of Righteousness, and I have 110 threat. And if I continue to cast it, it's going to keep adding up each time. This threat does split in between targets, very similar to our buff spam method, but again, this is something that's going to be working for you in your favor in AoE situations, in single target situations. It's something that it is really important to be mindful of because it is going to, again, produce a lot of threat. So right here, this is going to be our burst rotation. This is just going to be, because we're Paladin and we use a prop Paladin and we use our one-hander most times, we're not going to have a weapon slow enough to get 2 globals in between each swing, which means that we'll very often be doing a rotation called a 2-1-2 for seal twisting, which means that you'll be twisting every other swing, and in between you're going to be using a filler global. This is either going to be your Judgment, this is going to be your Consecrate, or your Blessing spam if you are doing that. So again, you'll be walking into the mob, you get a Judgment to start, get your seal back up, get a Consecrate down, and then in between your weapon swings finishing, that's when you're just going to be twisting your seals. Right here, I get a Parry Haste, which you can see you'll just adapt with it on the fly, and then you will just twist as often as you can and get those Judgments out. So right here you can see that Consecrate is our highest damage, especially if you have spell hit on a boss. That is going to be our burstiest threat. And another thing that I want to touch on is that while our melee swing is showing as our highest damage dealing ability, it is not actually going to be our highest threat producing hack. So the reason for that is because Righteous Fury is going to give a 90% threat modifier to our holy damage, which means that our Consecrate, our seals, and judgments are going to be giving almost double the amount of threat for the damage that they produce, where our melee swing, because it's physical, is not going to have any of those modifiers whatsoever. So even though our auto attack has produced 700 threat, our Seal of Righteousness underneath it has produced almost 1200 threat, even though it's produced less damage. Seal of Wisdom This is going to be one of our best judgments for sustaining on a long boss. In terms of threat, this is still going to be behind Judgment of the Crusader, but if you have another paladin in your raid, most likely a Holy Paladin will be providing this. If you have a Ret Paladin who will usually have a better Crusader than you, then it will become your responsibility to make sure that Wisdom is on the boss. Wisdom has a few different ways of restoring mana. Essentially, when you either strike with your weapon while the seal is active, you have a chance to give 90 mana to yourself. Or when you judge the effect, it will put a debuff on the target so that when anyone lands a weapon strike or a spell attack, they have a very high chance of replenishing 58 mana. Keep in mind that both of these effects are not influenced at all by Righteous Fury, meaning that the threat that you get from mana will be the exact same amount whether this ability is active or not. The way that Mana Threat works in Classic is that each point of mana restored will give you half a threat point, and this is going to come from any source that replenishes. So this will be Wisdom, this can be your major mana potions, and this can also be your Dark Rune and other similar items. You will not generate threat from effects of MP5 such as Blessing of Wisdom. So, one of the various ways that we have to activate this can be our weapon oils that can proc and hit the target, our damaging seals. This is going to be Seal of Command, Seal of Righteousness, and seal twisting them together can actually give you these procs at the same time. Seal of Wisdom does not have an internal cooldown. Next, we have our main weapon swing that can also activate this ability, and our damage judgments of Command or Righteousness when we use them off cooldown. So keep in mind, very similar to the seal threat, this is actually going to snowball for us over the duration of an encounter, where it can be about 3 to 5% of your total threat. Especially if you're using your potions on cooldowns, your dark runes are being used, and you're also successfully seal twisting at each opportunity that you have. Right here, I have an example of Righteous Fury and its effect on Seal of Wisdom. So right here, I have two different fights with an ogre. On the left, you can see that I have Righteous Fury active. On the right, I do not. So as I hit the target, I'm going to produce some threat, and as you'll see on the left, I do 195 melee threat. On the right, I do 217 melee threat. Melee threat's going to be 1-1 because it is physical, so it does not interact with Righteous Fury. And I'm going to get a Seal of Wisdom proc on both, which is going to give me 45 threat. And again, threat from mana is for each 1 point you get half threat. So I'm going to get 45 threat and a 45 threat. Even in the example with Righteous Fury, you'll see that it equals 240 threat, which is 195 from the melee, 45 from the proc, giving the exact same threat as expected. Whereas without Righteous Fury, it is still going to give me that same amount of 217 threat added with 45 to give us 262. This is just an example to show that Seal of Wisdom will not scale with Righteous Fury when it comes to threat production. This is just going to be a good example of how our melee threat generation can get shut down by avoidance. So with our seals, by casting it, we still do get something over nothing, which is better than most of the other tanks, just because if a warrior gets dodged or parried on his attack, then he just misses out on his global and the damage and the rage that comes with it. For Paladin, we at least generate the seal threat, but I wanted to show this example of how much threat we do also miss out on when we are avoided for our attacks as well. So in order to get your seal damage, the weapon attack does still need to land on the target. Right here you can see I got Seal of Righteousness, I get the 184 damage, but if I get parried by this mob, I get nothing. So you can see it just gives me parry, and I don't get the Seal of Righteousness or the Seal of Command damage because the attack did not land on the target. I do still get the threat for casting the seal, so I do still get the 110 or the 114 threat, but which is better than nothing. But this can just show you the dangers of what you can run into if you are just unlucky and get parried by the mob. Typically, in this case, what I do is that if this happens, especially like on a raid boss, I will start swapping to buff spam to compensate. And that's just because the threat from buffs cannot be resisted and or miss. So be prepared to do that if necessary, if you do get unlucky. Weapon skill goes a very long way to help avoid this, but again, and just get unlucky in the game times and it will happen. And one of the best ways to pivot will be using our other threat generation methods. Before we jump into the multi-target stuff, I do want to go over a couple of one of the main strategies that you're going to use in order to build a lot of threat at one time. This is mostly going to be in like dungeons and trash, or to climb on the threat meter after a threat reset, again in dungeons on stunnable targets. So this is where your Seal of Command is going to come into play. So your Hammer of Justice, Seal of Command has an extra modifier on the tooltip that when you use it against CC targets or incapacitated targets, you will actually get a bump in its damage when you judge it. Like double damage. So what you can do when you a lot of threat in a pinch, especially for dungeons, what you want to do is you'll Hajj the target and stun him, Hammer of Justice. And Hammer of Justice on its own is actually going to produce like 200 threat ish, maybe a little bit more. So the stun itself, while it can buy you some extra time to build up on the target, is also going to give you a bit of a head start. And then you would max rank Judge Command into the target. If it doesn't crit, it's still going to do a lot, but again, since it gets that melee crit chance, if you crit it, you're going to get double damage, which is going to give you a lot of threat in a very bursty way. So right here, you'll see I'll Judge Command, and that crits for almost 1200, which with Righteous Fury, you're going to be getting almost 30% or 20. I'm sorry, you're going to be getting almost a double threat because of the 90% modifier, which is going to then spike me up to 2.6k threat, which is going to be one of your most consistent methods of doing so. If you are in a situation that requires a taunt, then you would be best off either using Blessing of Protection on the target with the highest threat, assuming that you would be the next target for the boss, or using a target dummy or a similar item where you are actually going to get a real AoE taunt from that item, which will buy you some time to then pick up the mob. But typically for bosses that have the uppercut ability, which is going to be when you get knocked into the air or stunned, and that boss will then reset their threat, this is going to be one of your best methods to get aggro back and protect your group. If this is like Ramstein in Strath Undead, then you could even follow this up with an exorcism to help snatch him back even harder if it's not enough threat, if you have a very geared group. But typically, this is going to be something that you'll do even while leveling, especially in Gnomeregan, the final boss in there. He will knock you into the air and reset his threat. So if you're playing hardcore, what you can do, again, when you get knocked into the air and stun the boss and swap to your two-handed weapon and Judge Command and then Seal Twist onto the boss with the two-hander, which will generate a lot of threat. Your two-hander is going to be your fastest or hardest hitting weapon to generate you threat because it does scale with Seal of Command. And then you would just switch back to your one-hander once you have him. So again, on any boss like that where you have those kind of resets, using your Hajj to your advantage and Seal of Command is going to be really, really essential to help secure threat on a mob that you don't have a lot of time for, or just to get back into the fight on the threat meter. One last strategy that I wanted to go over or show is going to be bubble canceling. Divine Shield is going to be our main defensive, our most common defensive. This is going to clear most any debuff in the game, as well make us immune to any type of damage, again, aside from very, very specific things. But Divine Bubble, you can wipe off a lot of very important debuffs. This can be the Curse of Ebon Rock, which will make him heal himself when attacking you. This can clear off the Fire Flame Buffet stacks on Firemaw in BWL. This can also be used to get out of fear and emergency CCs in situations. Let's say you get hexed in a ZG or a ZF or an LBRS and you don't have a Magic Dispel. This is your one get out of jail free card on a 5-minute cooldown, so you can actually use it very, very creatively. One of the biggest things that you can do with this in raiding, this requires a very specific timing, but you can actually use it to immune heavy hitting attacks or tank busters. This is going to be very unreliable against random ones such as Mortal Strike, where it is not telegraphed and can just come out at any time. So this would be a good example. In ZG, we have the Phenoxys, who is the snake boss, and one of the things that he likes to do is to hard cast a Holy Fire, which will hit for about 2 or 3k. Not the end of the world, but again, if you can avoid the damage, why not? So you can see here, the ads are just about dying, and I'm tanking the boss. I have a good threat lead. The most important thing to keep in mind is that you cannot stay in bubble for a long duration, because while you are immune to all damage, it is also going to act as a threat suppressant, meaning that you will need a cancel macro to be able to take this off quickly. And it is important to know that when you have a threat suppressing modifier on you, you will actually need to generate some form of threat, some amount of threat, in order to kind of reactivate your position on the threat meter. But what I mean by that is that I can bubble, I can pop out of it, and if I don't do anything, as in hit the mob or generate any sort of threat, the mob will continue to attack the other people, which you don't want. You don't want the raid to die. So one thing that I do is I will actually use my seals in order to generate that threat for me instantly and immediately as soon as I exit that bubble. So because seals generate threat, as we talked about earlier in the video, you can actually time coming out of your bubble or canceling it with your macro and activating a seal or getting an auto attack off to immediately grab that boss so that he doesn't randomly auto attack someone and kill one of your melee, potentially. So on this fight here, I've got a decent threat lead, and the boss starts to cast Holy Fire on me. So as you can see right here, I have a good amount of threat. I have time until this Holy Fire is going to go off, and I have my global coming off. You are going to need your global for this. As you can see, all of my raid members are alive and healthy. The boss just did a Holy Nova, so it just hit everyone. And Leonidas, who has Death Wish, is second on threat. And again, if he were to get auto attacked by this boss, he would be very, very dead. As you can see, he's standing right next to me right here. And so before the Holy Fire goes off, I'm going to activate Bubble. The Holy Fire still has 0.1 seconds left to go off because, and I want to have that bubble up. And as soon as he finishes that cast, he is going to start going back into his auto attack. You can see he's locked onto me though, because once a mob commits a spell cast, they're kind of tunneled in and locked into that until it finishes. So here I have the bubble. I'm then going to cancel the bubble. As you can see, I have Forbearance. The cast is going off, and in this top left up here, you can actually see the text saying immune, because the Holy Fire went off and I've immuned it. I took 0 damage from that Holy Fire, my Divine Shield is already down, and I'm getting a fresh auto attack into the boss to then reactivate my position on the threat meter, which shows that Leonidas did not get attacked, nor was he in any danger from the boss. The boss didn't look at him, and he's still on me, and the fight continues as normal. And again, that's just a bit of damage that the healers don't have to heal, and there's no other mechanic that I need a Divine Shield for in this fight. So now Divine Shield's only a 5-minute cooldown, which means that you could do this potentially for every boss if every boss has this sort of mechanic. And this is just a good example of, again, very creative ways that you can use Bubble to your advantage in a way that other classes and other tanks don't have. I know that Paladin typically is referred to as having no defensive cooldowns, but again, we have a very creative defensive cooldowns. Our big one obviously being Lay on Hands, which again is an hour cooldown that we can't use very often. But Bubble is our shortest cooldown, and we can use that very often and very creatively in very, very specific situations. As long as we have the muscle memory to actually bubble cancel properly. So if you learn how to do this really well, especially from spellcast coming across the room when you're at critical health or things of that nature, knowing how to bubble cancel and re-grab them with your seal threat, because you can do that from anywhere across the room, can actually make you a really, really tanky, and your healers will love you for thinking outside the box and being creative with that. So now I'm just going to throw on a montage of kind of putting these things together, just fighting a couple mobs here and there. I hope you learned something from the video. Please drop a comment if you're interested. Again, a link to the build and a link to the video of going into Wisprot will be in the description. I'll probably put it on a link in the video as well. I hope you guys really enjoy it. And again, if you are playing Paladin, I really hope that you enjoy this build. It is very, very fun and has a lot of depth to it. So thank you guys so much for watching. Enjoy. Peace.